and then engine principles test 12. But this is heat and AC test 15, and this is a multiple guess is what it is.
I like the multiple guesses.
Yeah. The only thing about it is whenever somebody guesses at them, you know, the people when they're guessing at the people that are guessing at true false questions will fail the test just about every time. I don't know. Yeah, I'm telling you, Murphy's Law. Technician A says eye protection should be worn when working with refrigerants. Is he right?
Yes.
Technician B says to avoid skin contact with refrigerants and their oil.
Yeah. I'd say both those.
Both of those guys are really on target.
Except when you're working on that, what was it? Was that a Bronco we were doing?
Yeah, oh yes, that was an explosion. Yeah, the Bronco.
You didn't tell me about that.
Yeah, two tech. Well, I mean, that was something I didn't really expect, but it was a really good lesson for you guys. What happened to Brian? Where's he at?
He fell off the earth.
I guess he probably did. I hope he comes on
Flat,
here.
you know.
Yeah, two technicians are discussing how to remove refrigerant from a system. Technician A says you can vent it to the atmosphere as long as it has moisture in it.
Yes.
No, never vent refrigerant to the atmosphere. Technician B says all refrigerant must be captured.
I'm gonna go with B.
Number 2 is actually going to be B. Technician A says the same recovery unit can be used for R12 and 134A. Technician B says the service hoses from R134A recovery unit must have shutoff valves within 18 inches of the end. Who is correct about that? Neither one of those guys is right because the shutoff valves are supposed to be within 12 inches of the end. Okay?
Yeah,
And ours are right on the end, on the big machine over there. However, I've got the same recovery unit that does R12 and R134.
it's just different tanks.
But yeah, they're different tanks. It's like you get 2 units in one. Okay, Brian, dig out your test.
I thought that's what they meant by recovery unit is tanks.
Yeah, that works, you know, recovery unit. Now, if you've got trash gas, you're supposed to use a special machine or a dedicated machine, and you're supposed to put it in a tank that is gray with a yellow top. And I got one of those in there.
Trash gas, you mean like when people pump other crap into it?
If it's got
If it's mixed.
propane or if it's got a mixture of R12 and 134, and you'd be surprised how many times you find that. And most shops don't have a refrigerant identifier for some reason or another. I really like the machines that have a refrigerant identifier built on them. They know if they got one. Anyway, let's see. Technician A says high pressure in recycled refrigerant is only caused by air contamination. Technician B says recycled refrigerant should meet the same purity standards as new refrigerant.
I'd say B.
That is B. Technician A says compressor failure sends metal and debris into the system.
That is true.
So it should be flushed using R11.
What?
Technician B says a good method to solve this problem is to replace the compressor and install an inline filter.
B only.
That's actually D, neither one of those guys. Basically, I tell you what I did one time, eons ago, back whenever, I mean, you've seen them Chrysler compressors that look like a V. And there was one that I replaced on a Chrysler LeBaron that we had over there at the company I was working for. Heck, this was back in '79 or whenever. And so the compressor went out on it. And I didn't know anything about air conditioning in those days. There was no ESCO certification. There was nothing. So I says, well, you know, I've got the refrigerant. I lost its refrigerant, I think, too. Anyway, I got a compressor, and I put it on there. Just bought one, popped it on there, sucked it down, charged it up, and it cooled really good for about 30 minutes until the compressor started knocking and locked up. And so I called the guy at the parts house and said, hey, what's up with this? You know, because like I said, I didn't know much about air conditioning. He said, well, your other compressor came apart and started, you know, making racket. Where do you think all that metal went?
In the line.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Well, give me another compressor. You know, of course, I had to buy one. So I pulled it off of there. This was, you know, the company I was working for was paying the bill, whatever. So I poured denatured alcohol all the way through the evaporator, filled it all the way up. And then I used an air blower to blow it out into a bucket. There was all kinds of crud came out of there. And then I did that with a condenser, like you guys did. Remember that? Y'all didn't y'all do one of those?
When you hooked the line up backwards and it went all over the...
Yeah, it went everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was one of them kind. It was a van. That van, we hooked up the line backwards and it kind of went everywhere. But long and short of it was we cleaned it out. If there's too much oil, like me and Melissa were doing a vehicle over here, and it was just, the evaporator was completely clogged up with oil. I mean, because if people kept putting too much oil in it, it won't cool good either. And that's why flushing is really important. And you can buy a cheap little flushing bottle like we got out here, but make sure you catch your stuff in a tank so you can see where it goes. Long and short of it.
I thought you were saying, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I thought you were saying before that when there was stuff in the system that you wanted to put an inline filter, take it out after it's run for a bit and then.
That's what Ford had us doing. They had us actually putting a filter in there, and they'd run it for 30 minutes. Then you'd pull the refrigerant out and throw that filter away and put another filter in there that was supposed to stay in there for the duration. Now, that is something that you can do, but there's also a little filter, a little screen in one of your worksheets says this, that will press into the suction side of the compressor. That actually, it's a little screen, a little small, it looks like a thimble almost. And you got a special tool that pushes it in there. And there's a little kit that you buy to do this with. It costs about $100. It comes with a bunch of different size screens. That'll actually, if you protect that thing, the suction side's where the metal's only coming in. So anyway, so a system contaminated with moisture should be evacuated for a minimum of 15 minutes.
I'd say it's a good place to start.
Well, it is, that's true, you know, you're okay. That's why our machine's got a 15-minute default timer on it, right?
Usually you want to put it on for a lot longer.
Yeah, well, they're thinking if you pull all the pressure out, the refrigerant, the moisture will turn into vapor and it'll go out of there, you know, but. Choose the one alternative that best completes the statement or answers a question. Ta-da, that's multiple guess. Technician A says checking the pressure-temperature relationship is a reliable way to check for contaminated refrigerant. Technician B says refrigerant with more than 2% of a foreign refrigerant should normally be sent off for reclaiming or disposal.
Hey,
B, I do not know where you would send refrigerant for reclaiming or disposal right now because I've got some and I don't know who takes it anymore.
It'd be a hazmat thing, wouldn't it?
Technically, but who wants it? You know what I mean? And a lot of times, if they do want it, they're wanting to charge you a bunch of money for it. I know Safety Clean would probably take it, but they say we'll take it if you'll give us $400, you know, that kind of stuff. You know.
is 6 true?
Yeah. I mean, number 6, 6 is true, and 7 is basically 7 is B. Refrigerant can be contaminated with NCG. What's NCG? Non-compressible gas.
Oh,
Like what? Air.
air.
If the system's not thoroughly evacuated before recharging, the recovery unit hose is not tight, the technician uses sloppy service procedures, all of the above. Quincy, do you use sloppy service procedures?
I
did?
do.
All right. Technician A says the system should be evacuated for twice as long if the vacuum pump will only pull it down to 20 inches of mercury. Technician B says the system might have a leak if it won't pull down into a deep vacuum. Who's right about that?
B.
B. Technician A says refrigerant charge levels are given in service manuals. Technician B says charge levels are printed on the underhood decal.
Both those.
Who's right about it? Yes, sort of. Yeah, both of them. Both of them are right supposedly, but I will tell you, I've looked high and low under some hoods and haven't seen a decal anywhere.
There was a car that we were working on up at the shop that they actually got a new hood.
Oh,
Brand new hood.
ooh,
No decals on it at all.
yeah. Well, a lot of times the decal will become compromised because the ink will run and because of the heat and everything. But now, General Motors was really good about putting a round sticker on top of the accumulator. It had all that information on it. But what happens when you replace your accumulator? That sticker gone. Forget it. You might want to take a digital picture of it, print it, and put it in the glove box, or maybe put it under the hood under some tape or something. You know what I mean? We'll make it easy for the next guy. Whatever. Let me see. Technician A says an overcharge will cause excessively high system pressure. Technician B says small can of refrigerant holds 1 pound. Who's right about that?
A.
I'd say they're both right.
No. How much is in a small can?
8 ounces?
12. That's not really a pound, but that's what's in the can. 12 ounces. You know. And my Jeep used to have a really slow leak. And when I was in one time I had to go and do some recruiting over there, and I was on a Jeep, and it was a really hot. You know, and it was cooling a little because I knew it hadn't gone atmospheric. If it's gone atmospheric, you better evacuate it before you charge it. But it hadn't gone atmospheric because it was still cooling some, but it was short cycling. So I go and I buy me a can of refrigerant, and I buy one of these little yellow hoses that punctures a can, and I put it on there, and the hose is about that long, and I just put the can under the hood, open it up, and close the hood, and just drove the vehicle around with the can on there, and it got cooler and cooler and cooler, and everything was fine after that. I mean, because it takes a long time to pull it in through the low side.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever do that? I mean, you're there for a while.
You have to rotate the can or whatever.
Yeah, you got to shake it around. Have you done that before?
Oh yeah, several times.
Yeah. You're a sort of a do-it-yourself kind of guy, aren't you? I am too.
Is that one just A?
Yeah, except the other day we did call Roto-Rooter because I did not want to work on getting our sewage line unstopped. That would have been a dirty job, right? Yeah, so I just let them, we paid them, and they were doing. So that one there is basically only A because it does hold more pounds. Refrigerant is normally charged to the high side with the engine running.
False.
That is false. If you got a machine like ours, it goes in the high side without the engine running, but if you're charging it if you try to charge it on the high side, you may completely blow up the can in your hand. Is that a good idea?
No.
That's not good, is it? Hold on a second. All right, I lost my place there. Okay, let me see. Technician A says retrofitting a system is simply a matter of recovering the R12 and recharging it with a drop-in refrigerant. Technician B says the charge level specification is the same with R130 or 4A as with R12.
Isn't it close, but not quite the same?
Yeah, it's not quite the same. Actually, usually when I'm retrofitting one, well, to begin with, you got to get, it's a good idea to put if you're going to retrofit one and do it right, you'll flush the system totally to get all the old oil out. You'll replace the accumulator and the orifice tube, and then you'll put new fittings on it, and you'll actually charge it up with the right amount of oil for having replaced all the components, 6 ounces or whatever it is, and then you'll put the R134 in it, and then you'll put a sticker saying that it's been retrofit. I think that's the right way to do it. Now, some of the people that do it in their yard, will actually just add a couple of ounces of this oil that's compatible with the 134, and then just put 134 in it with the fittings changed. And they'll get away with that, and it usually works. So it's used to, they were saying if you were going to retrofit one, you'd have to have a new high discharge line with a high side, with a high pressure switch, and we never had to really do that.
So
Okay.
is that one neither?
That particular one is number 13 is actually going to be D, and technician A says snap approval indicates a good refrigerant will have no problems in a system. Technician B says using any refrigerant that contains R22 requires a system to have barrier hoses. My goodness, B. Wow. R22, please. I don't put R22 in nothing.
Isn't that house stuff?
It is, and I'll tell you something else it'll do. It'll actually wick into the rubber seals and stuff, and I would never use R22 on a car. That's bad news. The new SAE standard J2788 requires improved performance from what? That's recovery and recycling machines. They got to be able to pull all the refrigerant out within a certain amount of time. And, they've got little SD cards you can plug in there, and it puts all of the, they actually store the refrigerant charge amounts for various different cars and all that kind of thing. But that's a fairly new standard, it ain't that new. If an AC system contains contaminated refrigerant, how can the contaminated refrigerant be removed?
C, use a separate recovery machine that is dedicated.
That's what I was saying, dedicated machine, and put it in that bottle. That's great.
You don't just vent into the atmosphere?
Bad idea. $10,000 fine. Actually,
When you get caught.
they've actually got this deal, nowadays where if you rat somebody out, they'll give you some of that money,
Snitches.
Oh, actually, I think I was reading about that on the ESCO website or something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
They're saying if you knew a shop or something that does that, you can report them and get money.
Yeah, but wouldn't you be a Benedict Arnold then? If they find out you got some money about that, the guy might come after you with his wrench. You know what I mean? A container of contaminated refrigerant should be colored
Gray
what?
with the yellow top.
Gray with the yellow top. I just said that. A container of recovered R134A refrigerant has a pressure of 91 psi at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. What does that indicate?
Normal.
That's a normal condition. Too much oil in the system will cause what? What do you think?
Pressure clutch slippage.
That's what I'm thinking.
I was gonna say either that or A.
Or noise.
What about B?
That would have been my fourth guess.
Okay. Bobby O. All right. Let me see here.
So that is.
Yeah, Bobby usually says, that's what I meant, okay?
So it is B.
It is B. The vacuum pump removes water from the air conditioning system by doing what?
What are you on?
He's on 22.
22. Wait a minute, I
You
apologize.
skipped 2 of them.
I sure did. I did a wonderful job of that. The system has been evacuated and the gauge valves have been closed. A slight increase in pressure after a short time indicates ding, ding,
B.
ding, a leak in the system. A leak. Let me tell you about this though. Every now and then I would take my yellow Jeep and I would bring it in here and I'd pull the juice out of it and I'd put some more in there just to demonstrate. Just pull out what was in there and put what was back. 1 1/4 pounds is what it held. And I did it several times. And then one day I decided I was going to replace my AC compressor just because it was making a little racket or whatever. It wasn't knocking or nothing, but I said, I'll just put one on it, you know. And so I bought an AC compressor. And I was here by myself that day. I was, you know, teacher work day or whatever. And I pulled the juice out of it, and, you know, it pulled out about, you know, 1.3 pounds. And I just left the machine hooked up to it because the compressor wasn't going to be here for a while anyway. And I went back out there, and it had outgassed a bunch of refrigerant, which means, you know, the oil that's in the accumulator and all is like a Dr. Pepper. You know, if you pull the juice out, it actually lets more refrigerant come out of that oil. And it actually picked up some pressure. And so I hit recover again because I had never unhooked from it, and I knew that was refrigerant that had come out of the oil. By the time I got through doing that, about 3 or 4 times, and I did the math, I had pulled about 2.2 pounds out of a 1.25 pound system.
Wow.
Because I didn't get it all out every time. Now, listen to this. This is really, really important. I got this from the Max convention when I went over there, when I used to go over there as a journalist and write articles for them. You listen to all these guys that do nothing but air conditioning. That's all they do, all they do, all they do. And I've mentioned this before, but I don't know if it burned it in. If it's on a cold day like today, where it's coat weather, right? And the shop is down around 50, 60 degrees. If you want to get all the refrigerant out of a system, you need to crank the car up and get it just blistering hot under the hood so that it's too hot to touch anything. You got me? Just crank it up and let it get really, 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 really hot. And then put on your mechanic's gloves and pop those recovery things on there while it's really, really hot. And pull the juice out of it while it's really hot, and you'll get all of it the first time usually. But if you just pull it out and it's 50 degrees and you haven't done anything, you'll get about half of it. And then you have to pull again and pull again. And that's where I was on that day. See, it was like 50, 60 degrees in here. It was cool weather. So always remember to get it really hot under there if you want to get it all out of there. What really gets your attention is when you think you've got it all out, you unhook your machine, you do some other stuff, and then you unhook a line and it goes, you know, because you didn't get it all out and outgassed. I mean, make sure that you've got it all out before you take anything loose. A container of contaminated refrigerant should be colored. Well, we've already been there. What am I doing? Okay. Which one?
21.
21. Technician A says evacuation is done with both manifold valves open. That's the 2 knobs. Technician B says a reading of 10 inches after 5 minutes is normal.
I'm going to go with A.
A, yes, A is good. It is our friend. A vacuum pump removes water by boiling it. It basically, well, you know, you take all the pressure away and it basically boils it out of there. A refrigerant container has been found to have a pressure above the maximum for its temperature. What should you do?
Store it in a cold place.
Recycle the refrigerant in the container.
Then it's into the atmosphere.
What? All right. Technician A says the vacuum is usually measured in PSI. Technician A says vacuum is usually measured in inches of mercury.
I'm going to say it's inches of mercury.
Yeah, inches of mercury is B is right. And what's the purpose of evacuating the AC system?
I want to say it's A. But
Well,
it could be both.
I mean, you're basically wanting all the air and all the moisture out of there. I mean, that is really not a good question. I mean, part of it's getting the air out, right?
Did they say it was C?
Yeah, I mean, 25, yeah, A is it's not just, Well, foreign substances would be air, so that is a screwball question. I'm gonna have to talk to them about that.
So it's C.
Yeah, all right, that's the end of that. No, it's A, actually.